What is up, guys? CM back with a tank review for you. Sorry for the lack of YouTube content for the last week or so. I've not really been particularly motivated to actually record anything, unfortunately. But got an whole review for you guys today. And for you guys who've been watching my streams when I was 3-marking this thing, I really do not think highly of this tank at all. To put it simply, as far as how I feel this tank compares to other tier 8s, I put it on the same kind of level as the Emil one, like right down there in the worst of them for tier 8 heavies. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Now I'll be clear, this tank when it was introduced was dumb. It still is, but it's not strong either. Back when this was introduced, it was a bit of a terror because back then, people were not firing as much premium ammo. Like pen values across the board at each tier were overall lower, and also introduced with the old matchmaking system, so it would see more variety of vehicles with different tiers at the time. While that matchmaking system had its own problems, the current one does very much as well. Also, this tank really kind of suffers in terms of gun depression on how the maps are now, obviously post 1.0, compared to how they were before. Everything's like it feels like everything is kind of like a little bumps and steeper hills that this tank kind of struggles with, especially from the front. And I'll show you guys exactly why. Some of you have probably noticed in the gun constraints area of Tanks GG there why, and some of you have probably played this tank and probably also know why. But we're going to start with the stats menu as always. So we're going to start with weaponry. Now, you do have 2 guns that are actually usable on this tank in terms of ones you want to be using. I'm going to start with the non-derp, so the 100mm experimental tank gun Kai. This is a 330 alpha gun for standard AP and premium AP, and then you've got 430 alpha on HE. 215mm standard ammo pen, 253 premium, and 53 HE pen. 0.42 base dispersion, 3.1 base aim time, a 100% crew. Will bring this up a bit. As you can see, this is essentially what Tanks GG bases this on. You have a DPM with a 100% crew of about 2,220, which is not bad actually. The reload on this gun is pretty nice for this kind of alpha damage. It's not super high alpha damage for a heavy tank, but the rate of fire is nice. Now, the problem with this gun is honestly the accuracy and the aim time. The soft stats don't feel too bad, but honestly, it's not a good gun compared to a lot of similar guns at the same tier. Such as the, in my experience, the T32 has a similar gun, just a slower rate of fire. It has the turret armor to aim, and it takes about the same time to aim anyway. And the Tiger 2 gun, obviously far better than this. Lova gun, similar but better in pretty much every aspect as well. So it definitely has competition there. The shell velocity is nothing special either. Standard AP has a velocity of 916 meters a second, and I'm pretty sure it's the same for every single shell other than so the HE is a little slower, but not by a lot. The shells are not especially expensive, 510 for standard AP, and 4,400 credits for premium AP, and 245 credits for HE. This is not a bad gun. It's not great either. I definitely don't think this is a good gun. I do feel like this gun does need a bit of a buff, and especially because this tank will see a lot of tier 10s and tier 9s that this gun will struggle with. Now, AP does make it a little easier to pen things, even with premium, because of how AP works with angled armor. It does actually do better against angled armor than heat and APCR. Obviously, the advantage to heat being that it has a much more extreme auto bounce angle, so if there's an effectiveness of the armor that the heat shell can pen, then it'll still go through even if it's at a 70-degree angle. It has to be an 80-degree angle on heat to go through. But the AP on this is actually not bad in terms of how it pens things, if it gets the chance to do so, of course. Next, we're going to move on to, of course, what a lot of people run on this tank, and it's definitely the more fun gun, but it's definitely a gun that has seen some nerfs. It's the Derp. This gun has actually this gun does not have a good reload for a Derp at tier 8. Unfortunately, this is the same Derp gun that you will find on the tier 6 and tier 7 of this line, the OI and the ONI. This gun on all three of these tanks has been heavily nerfed in terms of reload, in terms of HE alpha damage, and in terms of aim time, gun handling, basically across the board. And yeah, it's just not a good gun anymore. You can see that 21-second reload with just a 100% crew. That is not good, my dudes. And 890 HE damage is nice for when you pen things, but unlike the KV2 gun at tier 6, and the SU-152 gun at tier 7, and the ISU-152 guns, because obviously you've got both the stock Derp and you've got the upgraded 152 as well, and for that matter the BL-10 gun on the ISU-152K. And yeah, all those Russian 152s will do better for HE damage at this point in time. Obviously, this is before any of the potential upcoming HE changes that Wargaming have been testing on Sandbox, but yeah, this is not a good Derp gun, unfortunately. Like, you'll probably have, instead of maybe 300 to 400 on a non-pen, depending on what you shoot, you're probably more likely to get more like 230 to 300, in my experience, on a non-pen. Don't get me wrong, it can still really annoy people, because obviously it's a Derp gun. HE is very good for tracking, it's very good for keeping people in place, it's very good for annoying people who are trying to side scrape. You know, it's got a few things going for it, and of course it has AP shells that are really good for overmatching Swedish TDs. Because, you know, you've got a 149.10 is Derp gun, but that should go through basically any of the Swedish TDs. And also, bonus, if a Object 257, the Russian tier 9 heavy with the incredibly heavily angled sides, if one of those is side scraping against you, then you can actually overmatch the lower sides, the really heavily angled sections, because those are 45mm, and any gun above 135mm in caliber, so 136mm in caliber or higher, will auto-pen them with AP. So, or APCR for that matter. So yeah, that is an actual use for this gun. You do also have heat shells with 150 pen, as well as the 121mm pen AP. Both of those are 700 alpha. The heat I find is useful against tanks that maybe have a little bit of armor against your HE and against your AP, but it's not super effective either. So things like ISU 152s. I actually two-shot an ISU 152K in a match using that ammo, and it actually kept me in the match longer to do more damage. It's a match on Empire's border as far as I remember. But anyway, moving on from the guns. Mobility, obviously, there is none. It's slow, it's big, you've got a top speed forward of 25 and 10 in reverse, both kilometers an hour, of course. 1200 horsepower engine for 9.9 horsepower per ton power to weight. Your tank traverse speed is just under 20 degrees a second stock here. Well, this is with the upgraded engine, of course. This is before you include crew skills like clutch braking. Your terrain resistances aren't anything special. You do have 10 degrees of gun depression, but that comes with an asterisk. I'll show you why when we get onto the armor. Speaking of armor thicknesses, we're going to ignore all these. It says 200 all around the turret, 200 on the front of the hull, 105 on the side, 150 on the rear, but we'll get onto that soon. 1700 health is nice though. You do have a nice big pool of hit points. One thing about this tank is that the fuel tanks are pretty weak, however, and they are basically all over the rear half of the tank, and in fact the lower half of the center of the sides. So yeah, also the ammo racks are pretty heavily dispersed, so that you might find yourself getting damaged fuel tanks and ammo racks quite a lot. I certainly found that to be the case. I didn't get that many fires, but I did find it got ammo racked a lot. So that means there's lots of places where you can find ammo racks in this tank. So yeah. 380 meters base view range is pretty nice, however. Obviously there's no camo on this because it's a gigantic heavy tank. So yeah. Anyway, moving on. So here we have the armor profile here. So you can see this bar along here, that's all 200 millimeters thick. You can see that there a lot of places are maybe like 215, 216, a couple of places of 200. These are little bulges that you can see that they round out from the mini turrets. And little shoulders there, also 200 millimeters, and the lower plate is 200 millimeters thick as well. And it's angled. A lot of tanks will shoot down on this. It does make it a little more effective, of course. This plate here is only 105. That is pretty weak, you can see there, and a lot of tanks will probably be shooting down on this as well, so you'll probably only get about 200 effective from that, roughly. And obviously the front of the mini turret is both 200, so they're not especially strong either. There's a little 105mm plate on this one right here, and you can see that's pretty weak as well. You can see the roof of this one, but it's 70mm. You're not overmatching that. So there we have it. These obviously, when you angle a tank, these little shoulders become weak spots as well, and you can also get tracked through the drive wheel. If someone's got about 220 to 230 pen here, they'll reliably go through and track and pen you right here. They can also pen right here with 120 pen, or well, 120 to 140 pen here to reliably go through. But obviously that's kind of an RNG shot. You're not going to get penned here a lot, so people just have to get lucky to pen right here. It's a pixel shot essentially. Now, before I move on to the rest of the armor, we're gonna look at the gun depression. So you can see these two mini turrets in the front. These get in the way a lot. So you can see here that you can't really depress the gun over the front of the tank at all. A little gap right here, and then the other turret gets in the way again, and you can see as we go around we start to get our full 10 degrees round that left side. Well, obviously left if you've got the perspective of you driving it, and round the right side we start to get a little more right here and then right there. So this is the easier side to get gun depression around. But you can see if we're angling like this to shoot down on someone, they have easy shots here. Now it does make this bit a little stronger, but they also have right here as an easy shot here. So if they got around 220 pen, they're reliably going through these spaces as well. And obviously they have the chance to track and pen you here also. And oh yeah, by the way, your turret's not good either. So your turret front and your turret sides are all 200mm thick. You got a couple of patches on the turret sides here and here. Well, really only here. There's some spare track links around here, and that gives you an extra 20mm of raw thickness. Does make it pretty strong. So if people manage not to hit your gigantic turret front, then they will bounce off of these sides. But yeah, you've got basically your entire turret front is essentially around 200 effective. And yeah, if someone's aiming up at you, there's a little weak spot right here of 150. So you got to keep that in mind. Also, your gun manlet won't really save you that much. There's a lot of areas around 200 effective there. You can see right there also. So yeah, don't expect that turret front to bounce against a lot of same tiers and against a lot of higher tiers. And there are some tier 6 and 7 tanks, but mostly TEDs, that will have no trouble penning you either. So keep that in mind. So yeah, that's all for the armor. Now let's move on to a match that I've got for you guys. So this is the last match that I had in the 3 mark grind. This is a tier 9 match on steps. this will show the absolute luck-based nature of the armor, and I absolutely mean that. If you're against anything that isn't tier 6, some tier 7s, then you're probably going to get pinned fairly reliably from the front in this tank. I've had people just auto-aim and go through every time. Now obviously this is the last one, so I was going zero fucks given at this point, so I loaded all premium AP with some HE for squishy targets, you know, like scorpions and things like that, some light tanks. Because you do have a nice big shell capacity on this tank. That is one of the good sides about this. And I'm just going to speed it up a bit because it's going to take a moment for us to get into position. So here we are, just going to start on this corner. Now this is the kind of corner where you can play around fairly effectively, because you know you can keep your armor fairly angled, and you've got a little bush in front of you, so you're not going to get insta-spotted. And it gives you time to fully aim, take shots. Now we got a little lucky with that bounce, that hit our lower plate, which at that angle would have been a difficult pen for standard ammo from that 257. We take the shot, trying to hit his cupolas, got a bit unlucky, but it's not a big deal right now. So I'm just going to speed this up. Side note as well for you guys while we're waiting. I was running turbo, bond optics, and I think I was running a rammer on this as well. I think I was running the bounty rammer. So I felt like I wanted to get the most out of the mobility and the DPM of this tank more than anything else. But you can run things like vert stabs as well, if you, maybe in place of the turbo, if you feel like the mobility is not as big a problem for you. Definitely I would run vert stabs if you're planning on running the Derp, mainly because that will frustrate you a lot in terms of aiming. You could use improved aiming module, gun laying drive as well, so you've got a couple of options in terms of equipment choice in this tank, but either way you want optics on this full stop. It's the kind of tank where you need to be able to see what you're shooting. Now at this point I noticed that my team is going to be taking better positions up front, so this gives me an opportunity to push in. Scorpion just killed the Type 59 on the right, so that means we're not going to get crossfired from him if we decide to push up. Somehow getting spotting on the 257 here. I think that was the Type 59 shooting through bushes that gave us that. Now we hear that the Conway has the Derp. Now that does mean that we know that he has about 260 AP pen and has about 200 premium Hesh pen. But that's also a 600 alpha gun, so that could hurt us quite a bit. Now essentially what we're wanting to do here is want to put pressure on them. We know that the 53 TP is stock because he's got 1400 hit points. Try and take shots at the Conway turret. That turret is actually kind of troll with the gun mandlet on it, so that thing can be actually annoying against this gun. This is the non-derp, by the way. This is the AP gun. Again, a little unlucky with that gun mandlet there. He's poking over, and he doesn't even bother to aim, so he bounces. That, I think that was off of the turret side there. 53 TP shoots at us with APCR, only hits the gun. Conway making a big mistake here, because he's not aiming, so he actually shoots down on the lower plate there and bounces. That's an example of when the lower plate is at an extreme enough angle, it can bounce. But this is, again, all luck based. He did not aim it well, so I was lucky that he was aiming like a potato. He tries to push forward, but unfortunately for him, he does the same thing again. He aims at the lower plate. The lower plate on this tank, as we saw, is stronger than the upper plate in a lot of situations. Now we're going to get shots on the 257. Nice easy shot into the upper plate at a very flat angle for us. Trying to shoot underneath the Conway here to try and get a shot on the cupolas, but luckily he just gives us his side because he's in a bad situation right now. This is going to be a complete ruffle stomp of a match, by the way, spoiler alert, in case you didn't notice already. But it's going to be a decent result for us all the same. This is the match that got me the 3rd mark. So we're just chasing down damage here on the I-6B. We know he has 186 standard pen. So we're just going in. Get the tracking shot. Friendly Type 59 there shoots him. We do get shot by the Scorpion, but we're just going to keep going here. We've got we do have a repair kit soon, so we're just going to finish this guy off with the reload. Repair our ammo rack right here. Scorpion's in a very obvious position as well. We're going to just get the easy shot on the Progetto here. Right into the back. Nice high roll as well. You know, getting towards 3,000 damage. This tank does not have particularly high requirements for gun marks, by the way. You're talking around about 2,100, 2,000 to 2,100. It's pretty low. And with good reason. This is not a good tank. The armor is unreliable at the best of times. RNG based otherwise. We're going to get a nice easy shot on the turret of the Scorpion. Again, a nice little high roll. That's the end of our match, because we are definitely not going to be able to move quick enough to get shots on the E75 or Progetto, not from over here when the entire weight of my team is bearing down on them. Here we go. Progetto goes down. E75, he's just going to get swarmed, so let's just speed this up. There he goes. So, I don't remember if this was an ace tanker. I just picked it because I knew it was a good result. And I knew it got me the third mark. I really didn't want to have to scour through all my replays for an ace before having to do an update, because I'm pretty sure there was an update today, and I don't want to chance like losing a replay and having to install an older client. So this makes things easier for me. So guys, would I recommend this tank? No, absolutely not. There's a reason why I paint bad tanks, or tanks I think are absolute jokes, in clown paint like this. And yeah, this tank definitely needs a buff. What do I think Wargaming should do with this tank to buff it? Well, a couple of things. I think they could keep the mobility the exact same. They could keep the gun depression the same. They could keep most things about this tank the same. They could even keep like the alpha damage of both guns the same and the pen values. But there's a couple of things that I would like them to do. One, remove the mini turrets in the front. It's just pointless having them there. They were not realistic, because I don't think this is a real tank. As far as I'm aware, I don't think it was even in blueprints as far as I remember. I could be wrong there. If you guys know better, maybe leave a comment down below. Always open to being corrected on things there. Because obviously not everyone can get everything right all the time. Secondly, I would like to see the frontal armor buffed, and only the frontal armor. So we're talking along this bar here, this angle plate here, and this here. I don't mind the shoulders. Leave those the same. But just this plate, basically the section directly below the mini turrets. I would like to see the front of the turret buffed as well. Now this is for a good reason. This is meant to be a super heavy. This is meant to be one of those that slowly pushes forward, uses its armor to try and break through the enemy team. It cannot do that currently. Currently it has to play slow as kind of almost like a second line support, and that's kind of what we did here. And that's how I was playing this thing for most of my matches. Because it's not a super heavy. It doesn't have the armor to be a super heavy. Basically all the other super heavies at tier 8 have better armor. So you've got your VK100, your VK168/Malbreaker. They are significantly better armored than this tank. They have more reliable guns as well. They have better gun depression values because they don't have the mini turrets across the front. They're better tanks than this for the role they're meant to play. This tank does need a buff, but I don't think it needs to be overpowered in doing so either. You could easily keep the shoulders the same. You could easily keep everywhere else the same as it is right now. Like I say, just remove the front mini turrets and buff the upper plate, the angled plate, and the lower plate on this tank. Hell, you could even keep the lower plate the same and just buff these two plates, and it would be better instantly. Hell, you could even keep the turret front the same. Just remove the mini turrets and buff these two plates, and it would be instantly better, because you could angle these round a corner to troll people before your turret gets shown. You could play it like the Tiger P in that aspect, and just in a better way. Though practically I would say that buffing the turret front would be the way to go as well, but that's just my opinion. If you guys have played this tank and felt the pain of playing it like I have, for those of you who watch my streams, that you'll definitely know frustration I felt with this thing when 3-marking it. Then let me know what you guys thought of it when playing in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.